afternoon. Excited to have Jadeveon Clowney back on the field today. That's going to be great in terms of his impact of what he's done for our football team over the course of the time he's been here. Obviously, a really good run player. He does that really well. Obviously, the pressure player that he has, but more than that, really just his leadership. And he's done a really great job with that. And I'm excited to have him back in there. And then Revel's going to be he'll be limited today, and it's really just in-game soreness. It's nothing big, but for him, it's going to be getting the reps in the walkthrough, and then he'll be out there today in the practice. But he will be listed as that. And then talking about Diggs, Diggs went through the walkthrough, did a nice job there. Continues to be more consistent, and that's what we're looking for: consistency. He's going through still a ramp-up period of coming back. And we will see where he is, just much like last week. We'll see where he is in terms of the consistency and the execution throughout the week, like we would with any player. And that's where he is. And then moving on to Minnesota. Minnesota, obviously, a big challenge. They got a big victory last week. And, host of receivers. The top three receivers are really good players. Tight end's a really good player. Their two backs are really outstanding and running the ball at a really good clip. In all personnel groups, their multiplicity is what creates that, and they do a really good job with mixing their personnels as they go through it in the run game and give you varied looks. So that's a challenge for us. Worked on that yesterday, working on it today, and then starting on third down, which is going to be a big down for us. So with that, I'll open questions.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. Justin Jefferson's one of the top receivers in the league, but the last couple of weeks his numbers have been down. Are you seeing anything on tape there where teams are taking him out, or is it something else that we're not seeing?
Yeah, obviously when you have one of the best or maybe the best receiver in the league, guys want to be able to do that, and that's what you're seeing a little bit of. And but again, they're going to be creative with moving him, motioning, getting him on the perimeter, and that's what they've done to get him the ball. But certainly an excellent talent.
How would you assess your linebackers with Murray and Wilson? I think Logan yesterday said he's still getting acclimated. He said he'll be acclimated forever in your scheme and those kinds of things. Yeah,
they're both doing, learning and growing together and doing a good job there. We've split time with those guys. We've evaluated their competition, and we're going to continue to do that. And it's important that, we look at it that way. We're always evaluating the number, how they execute on the field, and what gives us the best chance in terms of the mix, who's doing what, 2 series, 1 series, 2 series, a piece, whatever that might be, rotational wise. But we're always going to look at that. What gives us the best chance to win?
That position, is it hard to get acclimated quickly because Logan came in, in the middle of the season?
Yeah, you got a veteran player, which makes it a little bit easier playing in a similar, 4-3 type of style system. And again, we're multiple and all those things, but I think it's easier for a veteran.
Matt Towers with ESPN. The consistency part with Diggs. Can you kind of what do you mean? Enough effort, a performance?
No, it's all about just being consistent with everything. It's for any player, right? It's I always talk to the players about being what's important now, and then the I in win stands for individual responsibility, and that's what it is. Your individual responsibility for all members of the football team, is to be wired into the meetings. Wired into the practice, knowing your job, doing your job, asking questions, make sure it's clear for you, and then go out there and execute all 11 all together every single play. And that's just really for everybody. And we're evaluating that throughout the course of the week. And like I said, who gives us the best chance to win the game?
Is it still a health component with him?
He's still going through a ramp-up period. You take all that time off, there's definitely a ramp-up period there, and he's going through that.
You mentioned Clowney's leadership. How have you seen that impact guys? What does he do in terms of helping guys out?
Yeah, just him helping guys with the technique fundamentals on the side, and his energy. I think that's a big part of it. Really you always it's not really what you say a lot of times, it's how you play. He plays with a great motor. You can see him making plays, getting off blocks, straining in the run game. Disengaging and making plays on the other side of the field. You saw the sacks that he had, versus Kansas City. Those were effort sacks. Our DBs would call them coverage sacks, but that's what you see on tape, and that's real leadership there because it's with the action.
John Machota with The Athletic. You guys, before the Detroit game, those 3 games, leading up to that, you have a 3-game win streak. Defense was playing great. Do you feel like you guys took a step back in Detroit?
Yeah, you got to respond to adversity or sudden changes. So that game was a certain situation where you had some short fields, where you had some things where you're on the other side, and they just happen, right? And we have to do a better job, of stopping them in the third down in the red zone when that happens and make them kick field goals. And you'd probably see a different result. So, yes, we do have to play better, and we do have to do better in those areas for sure.
And then just in terms of getting the pressure on Jared Goff, was it just maybe not having Clowney out there, or why do you think you guys weren't able to get maybe more pressure on him?
Yeah, some of it was, when you look at it, they were chipping a lot coming out, for our edges and stuff, and working the guys inside and bringing the center to certain people. But, it's really about us, winning our one-on-ones and then creating pressure with pressure, So, again, we got to look at that. I have to look at that and do a better job of that. And, we'll look and see where it is.
Nick Harris, Forward Star Telegram. Donovan Ezra-Rocker, Brian Schottenheimer's talked about how he challenged him earlier in the season to be more of a vocal leader. Ezra-Rocker.
Okay.
How have you seen him take that approach and be a leader for some of these other guys?
Well, he's a mature young guy, so he's a very mature soul, and he does a great job with, knowing what to do, doing his job, but he's also very talented. So the guys respect that, and the guys respect also how he works. He's a real worker. And he works in the meetings, works in the walkthroughs. He's always working on his technique, and then when he plays on the practice field, man, he goes. It's no other like a lot of our guys do. Point to the D tackles; those guys are workers, overshown. All those guys work their tail off, and they go. And that's the motor we're looking for, and he certainly has that.
And then back on the Detroit game, you guys blitzed quite a few times on those first 2 drives and not as much on the final. I think it was 10. What was the credit to that? Is it just kind of the threats that they had coming out of the backfield, or what was the game plan there?
Yeah, I mean, you call the game, right? You call the game the way you see fit to win the game, And obviously, I could have done a better job, and certainly I own that, and take that. I understand that, and again, we didn't win the game, so I always look at all the calls, all the breakdowns. And where they are and why they happened. And that's important to do that as a group, and we did that, and we're moving on to Minnesota.
And last quick one with Rebel. It was a struggle for him. What was kind of the talking points to him coming out of that game?
Rebel's a young guy. He's a young player, and he's going to learn. And I told him this, after he started, played in his first game, you're going to learn so much every single game, right? There's situations that are going to come up, the matchups, like I talked about last week, they're going to come up, and he's going to keep learning, keep growing. And the one thing I love about him is that it doesn't shake him. He's right there all the way, and and he does a really good job of doing that, resetting, refocusing, going on to the next play. So he doesn't let it bother him. But again, he did some good things too, and he continues to.
Joe Hoyt, Dallas Morning News. Ron Bland, obviously a lot of interceptions in his career, has only one so far this season. How does Duran get his hands on the ball more?
Yeah, I think he has gotten his hands on the football a bunch. We just got to go ahead and finish. He's right there. It's about your catch and all those things, and he's got some deflections and those types of things. But I think those things are coming. The guys are really working hard to pound the rock during the week, and he's had some opportunities, and we just got to seize those. But again, he'll get more as he goes because he's been close to the ball.
And then J.J. McCarthy, no interceptions last week, but the Vikings lead the league in interceptions thrown this year. How much of an opportunity is that, and how much of an emphasis is getting takeaways this week?
It's every week. It's every week. We emphasize it every single practice. Every single day in the meetings, and it's about what we do on the practice field. And I'm seeing the progress. In terms of the attempts, and we just got to stay on it as coaches and players and be mindful and intentional during practice.
Garrett Podell, CBS Sports. Matt, you talked about competition with Kenneth Murray and Logan Wilson. What specifically would one of them have to do to really separate themselves and get the majority of those reps?
I mean, it comes down to the practice tape. It comes down to the practice tape of the execution, making plays on the ball, because I've always said this even since, when I was coaching Sean here before, Sean Lee, is that the linebacker's job is to hit the ball. You are the point of attack. There is no backside for you. So to me, you should be able to have, 15, 16, 18 tackles in a game, and you should make ball production. You should have caused fumbles, recovered fumbles, interceptions. You should have all those things because you're the middle of the defense. And so that's what we're looking for. and those guys are working to do that. And I'm starting to see with Overshone, I'm starting to see some of that come to light, of him hitting the ball the right way, in terms of his strip attempts, his eyes getting back, footwork, and all those things. But again, that's for everybody.
With McCarthy, what do you see on tape? He's kind of bottom of the league in a lot of statistics. Why do you think he's struggled, and where do you think he's at?
Well, I always think it's hard for a rookie at first, to come out of the box, and light it up. You don't see that, but you see him being more comfortable. He's more comfortable, certainly last week, and he's growing like everybody else, in the league, and you can see that for sure.
Tommy Harsh, Cowboys.com. Excuse me, you've had to face Aaron Jones quite a bit over the last couple of years. What's made him kind of just steady production-wise and steady being one of the better running backs in the league?
Yeah, I would go to the second thing first is his toughness. I mean, he is as tough as there is. I mean, he's for a guy that's not that big, he throws it in there, and he does a really good job. He's an inside and outside runner. He can capture the edge. And then he's a threat and a weapon as a receiver. In the screen game, in the check down game, he can take it, and he does a really good job with that. And then obviously his talent. He's a very talented player, and he's a true pro. You can certainly see that.
We've talked a lot about 4 games in 17 days. I know you only have 1 practice under your belt, but are you seeing your players a little bit more energized now that they've had the extra couple of days leading into this week?
Yeah, I was talking to Shadi last night, and the thing I said to him was that I was really pleased with the practice. Because when you have all those days of games and not much practice, yesterday's practice was really good in terms of the energy, execution, in terms of the guys doing what we're asking them to do. So it was really good yesterday.
Ed Werder, WFAA. Another question on Diggs. When Shadi was asked about him yesterday, described the situation much the way you did as far as ramp up, and said he feels good, he wants to play. And then he said ultimately he's got to do everything the right way. What is your interpretation or explanation for what exactly that means?
Well, I mean, when you say everything the right way, it's just when you first come into the building, right, and then and then you leave the building, right. It's just everything the right way. So it's just intentional meetings, intentional on the practice field, walkthroughs, talkthroughs, all those things. That's for everybody. We're not asking, him or anybody else to do anything different. That's what we ask of all of our players, everybody that's here. That's what we do. So. And that's what I believe he's referring to. I'm not speaking for him, but that's what it is.
If Diggs were to reach that point and get back on the field this final month, what kind of a difference do you think he could make in terms of his skill set?
Yeah, I think he could make some impact. He really could. And but again, it's all about being that consistency and doing the things right. But for me, anytime you have a talented player and we're really able to utilize him as he ramps up and he shows that he's ready to go health-wise and and the other things we've been talking about. Certainly want to use those guys for sure.
A couple quick more, Skyler and Patrick. Saturday, the AP. And John mentioned the 3-game run that was pretty good, and then you struggled against Detroit. How much of your messaging is, hey, let's get back to that 3-game run?
Yeah, with the players, I talked to them about, hey, the last 4 games, in the run defense, we're third, in the league in the last 4 games, and third down we're 10th, in terms of that. There's been improvement. You have seen the improvement. Sometimes, you take a step back, right, and then you got to reset. But again, 3-1 in 4 games is pretty good. It's not the best. We wanted to be 4-0, but we got to now move that forward and go to the last quarter of the season. It's important that we keep getting better. Keep improving, and we had some improvements in the last quarter, so we got to do a great job with this quarter of the season.
Hey, folks, Patrick Walker, Cowboys.com. Coming off of a promising rookie season, Maris Leofau, he did some good work for you. There was a 3-game stretch, I think, week 4 to week 7, where he averaged around 25 reps, but these last 3 weeks, he's averaging around 7. I realize you guys have Logan Wilson now in the building, DeMario Overshone his back. What more do you need to see from Maris Leofau for him to earn more reps on the defensive side? Yeah,
I think he's doing the same. I think he's playing really well and doing a good job. He had some good pressures last week. It really comes down to our packaging. So when we put different people in there, he comes off the field. So it really comes down to that. If you're going to play with an extra D lineman or an extra DB, he comes off the field right now. So that's where it is. It's nothing he did right or did wrong or any of that. So he's a great pro and a consistent player and does a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.